In this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to professionally install shiplap. And be sure to stick around to the end because, number 8 is a crazy tip that no one ever talks about. So be sure to stay tuned for that one. Let's go. Tip number 1 is that you need to pre-paint your shiplap. Whatever color you want your final project to be, go ahead and put probably 2 coats on your shiplap before you make any cuts, before you start installing it, anything like that. Now you might be tempted to say, well, it's gonna get all marked up and scratched when I'm installing it, so I wanna make sure I paint it at the very end, right? And while you're kind of right in thinking that, there's no way that you're gonna be able to get all of those seams, all of those cracks painted once the shiplap is installed, because that shiplap is fitting very tightly together. So you wanna go ahead and what I do is I just recommend putting 2 coats on the entire shiplap, and don't forget to mark up the edge or paint the edge of the shiplap. Otherwise, when you install it, if you try to get it painted, it's gonna be so tough. You're not gonna be able to get your brush in those cracks, and you're gonna end up with little white lines in your shiplap, and it's not going to look good. So tip number 1 is pre-paint your shiplap. Before I start hanging the shiplap, I wanna make sure that I don't get to a position where I'm gonna be having to, at the very end of the wall, be putting in a little sliver of shiplap. So what I've done is I've measured this, and from the bottom of the board to about where the next board will start is 6 3/4 inches, or 6.75 inches. What I did is I took this and I took my entire height of my wall, which is 72 inches, divided it by 6.75, and it came out to like 10.67. In other words, I'm gonna have to take one of these pieces of shiplap and rip about 1/3 of it off. That's okay. I just wanna make sure I don't get to a situation where I have to put like, a 1/2 inch strip of shiplap somewhere. If that were the case, I would rip the bottom and the bottom and the top piece of shiplap. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, you just wanna make sure you have your layout. You think through your layout first before you start running shiplap, and then get to the very end and realize there's a little gap here that's gonna look really weird. So think through that ahead of time. We're gonna be good to go though, so what we're gonna start doing now is find all of our studs. Tip number 3, this is a big one, a very important one, is that you want to find the center of your studs. Now notice I didn't say that you just wanna find where your studs are in the wall. You're gonna wanna know where the dead center of each stud in your wall is, and you wanna know where the end of the stud is on the left and on the right, because if you're gonna be like me, butting up 2 pieces of shiplap on a stud, you wanna make sure that you make that seam right in the middle of your stud. Otherwise, you might have trouble getting a nail in a stud when you go to install one of your pieces of shiplap. What I typically do is I make sure I use my stud finder, and the stud finder I have from Klein Tools, it will tell you right where the edge of a stud is on both sides, and then make a little pencil mark on the left and the right, and then carry that mark, that center line, all the way up and down your wall, so that with each row you can see here is the center of the stud that I'm nailing into. If you want to pick up that stud finder, I'll link it down in the description along with all the other tools that I use to install shiplap. However, if you don't want to pick up a stud finder that has a laser level, what you can also do is take a hammer and a nail, a really small nail, and just kind of tap into your stud and then go move left and right, making these little holes until you find the end of your stud left and right, and you can just mark the middle. This is gonna put some holes in your wall, but once again, this is gonna be covered with your shiplap, so really doesn't matter too much. Just use a really small nail. That's another way to find the dead center of your stud. Tip number 4, you wanna work from the top down. I really don't have a lot to say about this other than the fact that this is just gonna be much easier when you're, installing all the shiplap with the way that shiplap's designed. It's just designed to be installed top down. Can you do it bottom up? Probably, but I don't recommend it. So work from the top, from your ceiling, all the way down to the floor. Hey, before I share this next tip with you, if this has been helpful for you so far, I just need one favor and one favor only. Hit the like button on this video. That's literally it. Thank you so much. Let's check out this next tip. Tip number 5, this applies to shiplap. This just applies to woodworking and carpentry projects in general. You want to sneak up on your cuts. Believe it or not all houses have walls that are perfectly square and perfectly true. Sometimes walls can have a little bit of a bend in them. Sometimes they can be not quite plumb or vertical. Sometimes they can have a little bit of an angle like this. Hopefully it's not that dramatic, but you never know. So what you want to do is sneak up on your cuts. For example, when I measured this first run of shiplap, it was 56¼ inches. I just went ahead and cut it 56⅕ just to make sure, and then I snuck up on that perfect fit. Take your time. It's okay if you need to go back to the miter saw and make one more cut to make sure you have the perfect fit, because what you don't want to have happen is cut some shiplap 1/8 or 1/4 inch too short, and then you're either gonna have to buy some more shiplap, or you're gonna have to install that, and you're gonna have this little gap on the sides of your shiplap, and it's just not gonna look good. So take time, sneak up on those cuts so you can get accurate results. Tip number 6, you need to make sure that you are using the proper nails for the job. If you look up on Google what length of nails you need to use for shiplap, I've even seen Google say that you can use 1.5 inch nails. I think, in my opinion, that's just way too short. I would not use anything shorter than 2 inches. You might even want to go to 2¼ inches or 2½ inches. General rule of thumb is you want at least 1¼ inch in your stud, all right? So if you need 1¼ inch of that nail in the stud, you got to account for the drywall that's also there, usually about 5/8 of an inch thick. Then you also need to account for the thickness of the shiplap. Usually that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I think 2 inches is probably safe. I wouldn't go much below that. What I'm using for this project is 2-inch nails, 18 gauge nails. That's what I'm using. I'm using my little Ryobi Airstrike nail gun to install this. That's what I recommend using, but just make sure you don't use nails that are too short. Otherwise, what will happen over time is this shiplap will pull away from the wall, and that will not be good. Tip number 7 is alternate your seams. If you're like me and you're gonna put seams in the middle of the wall, what you don't wanna have happen is all of your seams be along one stud. It's just not gonna look good. So what I always do is I'll run, at least what I'm doing with this project, I'll run a length all the way across, then I'll put a seam on my right stud, then on my left stud, then all the way across. And you can make it look random. I just don't like to have seams, 3 or 4 seams lining up on the same stud, back to back to back. I just don't think it looks good, me personally. So I would recommend alternating your seams so that it looks professionally done. Number 8, this is a huge tip. This tip will make installing shiplap professionally just much, much easier for you. And that is when you come up on an outlet, on a receptacle, utilize outlet spacers. What scares a lot of people when they're doing a shiplap project is they don't know what to do when they come up on an outlet, an electrical outlet. And so what some people do is they'll just kind of like shiplap around it, but then your outlet is kind of sunk into the shiplap. It just doesn't look good. So what you want to do is remove your outlet cover and then bring that shiplap right up close to the sheetrock cutout where that receptacle box is. If you ever installed a tile backsplash around an outlet receptacle, it's a very similar process. So you want to come, really close to where that opening is, like you're seeing right here. Then, once you're ready to reinstall your outlet cover, you can use these outlet spacers that will bring the receptacle forward so that you don't have this weird gap between your outlet cover and your outlet. This makes everything look really, really professional, and it's, these outlet spacers are super, super cheap. I'll leave a link down in the description to where you can find these outlet spacers. It'll bring you to the Home Depot website. And if you use that link, it also helps out the channel. So I really appreciate that. But these outlet spacers have saved me on multiple projects, from tile backsplashes to shiplap. And I feel like not a lot of people know about them. So that's a good tip, tip number 8. Tip number 9 is once you have all your shiplap installed, you want to go ahead and backfill all of your nail holes with spackling. Now, don't overdo it with the spackling. You just want to work it into these nail holes just enough so it's just over the nail hole so you can come back later, sand it off, and get ready for your last coat of paint. I have done shiplap projects in the past where I've left those nail holes in the project. I always wish that I went back and filled them later. It just never looks quite as good. So take that extra 30 minutes, if that, and fill all your nail holes and then sand them down. It'll make your project look much, much nicer. And then tip number 10 is at the end of your project, you want to go back over all of that spackling and give it a nice third coat of paint. This is where you make sure you do have all of your paint covered, where you might have, any dings or marks from cutting or transporting your shiplap. And once you have that third coat of paint on, it's going to look amazing. Now, I'll give you a quick bonus tip number 11, I guess, when it comes to paint. If you're using like a Sherwin-Williams paint, that's what I'm using this project. A lot of other paint companies do the same thing. If you look on the back of your paint card, when you go to select your color, it will tell you other colors that work really well with that color. So for example, you can see here, I'm using a color that I know looks really nice with my sheetrock wall color. And so if you're like me and you're in a paint store and you can't decide what color do I use, and you have 3 different types of gray that really all look similar, but you're not sure what it's gonna look like, I always like to flip over that paint card, look at the back and say, what do the professionals recommend will go well with the colors that are already in my home or already in my client's home. Doing this will probably just give you more confidence in the color you select and make sure your project turns out looking great. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 or maybe top 11 tips for installing Shiplap. If you have questions, because some of you might have questions on this, please let me know in the comments. I do my best to answer most, if not all of them. Otherwise, check out one of these 2 videos here. I know you're gonna love them, and I'll see you in one of these 2 videos.